Heads up, this might be a little bit longer video than typical. I'm just thinking through some things, so might as well film it. Alright. I'm frustrated by by how people react to different things. So Andrew Yang, I saw this video. It's something about Iowa. I was just listening to it on the car ride home. Apparently he spoke at this, and apparently Pete Buttigieg also spoke at this. Now, in regards to the topic of women, I didn't listen to all of Pete's, but just listening to the part about how they address the topic of women's rights and such, and just even past videos with Andrew Yang's perspective on on women's rights and you know, quite frankly, the freedom dividend. By now, hopefully, you know, the freedom dividend, you know that that's universal basic income. But we're not calling that because that name's got a real stigma to it. So freedom dividend, right? Excuse me. So here's a fundamental difference. Andrew Yang talked about, you know, Democrats and progressives talk about women's rights, but let's do something about it. Let's give them $1,000 a month so that they're not stuck in a job or a bad relationship, and they have this economic resource to be able to, you know, get away from bad situations or situations that they don't want to be in. So that's doing something about it, valuing what might not be constituted as work, you know, but it can be, if we redefine our concept of what work is, you know, and give them the freedom dividend, then that's showing value to, you know, them, and there you have it. So that's kind of his overall thing. I'm oversimplifying it, but Pete Buttigieg's thing is like, he was really going after Republicans and GOP. He was like, the Republicans want to take away women's right to choose, and you know, and I think that is absurd and horrible, and we as men should fight for women's rights, you know, and etc. And huge applause line, lots of cheering. I was like, oh man, this, I think this is a good example of when Andrew Yang talks about applying 20th century solutions to 21st century problems. I think this falls into the same camp, you know. The whole thing about, you know, abortions and all that stuff is such a wedge issue from the 20th century. And I remember in some other interview, Andrew Yang was asked about, like, you know, about abortion and all that stuff, and his take on it. So I really loved his response and his approach to it. His response was like, yeah, it's, when it comes to that stuff, of course it's women have the right to choose. That's not even a question. Like, men, we're out. Like, that's all y'all. That's all on y'all. You decide. But then he followed that up with, but, you know, we would like to see the number of abortions reduced and avoid it as possible. So put $1,000 a month in everybody's hands, and you will see a reduction in the number of abortions. You will see it, because they will now have the economic resources to care for that child. Nobody's talking about it like that at all. At all. Oh, it's profound. On the one side, he's saying, liberals, progressives, Democrats, you talk about women's rights and all that sort of stuff, and you're talking about all this fight for their right, this and that. How about we do something about it? How about we give them $1,000 a month freedom dividend so that they have the economic resource and mobility to take care of their stuff? How about start there? And then he's going, you know, on to the other end of the spectrum and saying conservatives, Republicans, listen, we don't like the idea of abortions either. So let's get this number down, give them that $1,000 a month. And remember, this thing has been tried in a smaller scale in Alaska, a deeply red conservative state. and it has worked. So you give $1,000 a month, and people's hands, guarantee you the number of abortions will go down because people have the economic resource to care for their children. So he's, it might sound like he's hard left on this position. He's not really. I don't know. That left, right, it doesn't matter. Forward. That's where he's thinking. He's like, look, this freedom dividend will solve a lot of problems. A lot of these problems we've been talking about in the 20th century, and we're bringing them up right now. Freedom dividend will chip away at them in a really, really real substantive way that we've never seen happen in this country before on this scale. So, okay, so there's this. Now, here's my big thing of pragmatism. Practicality is not always attractive. That's the toughest part about all this. Like he's not talking about Donald Trump in a very knee-jerk way. Like, we gotta get that guy out of office, and he's a racist and a sexist and this and that and blah blah blah. Like when you hear that, yeah, you're gonna draw attention to yourself. It's very knee-jerk and that's very inflammatory on both sides. Even the negative attention on that is attention. So it draws more fuel and fire. Versus, we need to solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. He got the problems right, but the solutions wrong. So we got to understand what those problems are and go after them in the right way. That's not as sexy. It's not as attractive. But he's trying to appeal to our higher brain. Like yeah. So, and I do notice this just purely from a marketing standpoint. Like his message is not necessarily like super exciting and super like get your adrenaline up, unless you can really see like, man, $1,000 a month is going to make a huge difference, not just in my life, but to my friends' lives, to my family's lives, to my coworkers' lives, to my community, to my friggin' state, to my region, to my country. It's going to make a huge difference. Oh my God, But there's this huge like skepticism, of course, that comes like, free? $1,000? Really? Yeah. Even though he explains it all. Yeah. So my suggestions, I don't know, maybe really, I hate to say it. I really hate to say it like this because I don't like this approach. But maybe it is the approach that draws attention. Is start hammering down, doubling down on that message of using 20th century solutions for 21st century problems is not the way to go. So him really talking about like, we are talking about the wrong things as a country. So I hate to say it because I don't like focusing on what is wrong. As a general, and Andrew Yang does talk about what the solutions, what the right things are. And he does present the problem and then he solves it. So, I don't know, like, from a marketing and media standpoint, like, just hearing people's reactions to what Pete Buttigieg was saying about like women's rights and how men have to fight for women's rights, but it was that, again, that kind of vague thing and just something that stirs emotion in principle and stuff, versus Andrew Yang saying like, look, you can talk all you want about being for women's rights, but how do you show it? Well, I'll tell you how you show it. Here's how. Freedom dividend. Boom. I don't know, maybe he just needs to be more gangster about it. I don't know. How are we going to market this? How are we going to market this and hit people in their hearts and heads? Like, yeah. We got to get gangster, gang. Let's get gangster about this. I don't know how we do that, but, but we got to make this message pop even more. It's popping, but it's got to pop harder. But I think we can do it. Let's do it.